Welcome to the Go Reflect Yourself podcast, bringing you real, practical, brain-based strategies to cultivate a life and business full of freedom and fulfillment, starting from the inside out. Working hard and staying busy will only get you so far. To truly become happy, content, and who we are meant to be, we have to move beyond physical capacities and begin to reflect from within. We have to change our thoughts and our mindset into our most powerful assets, transforming you to take inspired action so you can become a better version of yourself and have the life of your dreams.
You are stronger than you believe. You have greater powers than you know.
Hello and welcome to the Go Reflect Yourself podcast. I'm your host, Heather J. Crider, and I am delighted that you are here. Today I have with me a guest who will make you think deeply and laugh loudly. He comes from a traditional career in concrete construction and then became a self-made serial entrepreneur. Heath Armstrong is an author, host of the podcast Never Stop Peaking. He has traveled the world and is changing lives through his creativity in his sweet-ass journal, as well as sweet-ass affirmations, which we will definitely talk about today. There's so much more I could say about Heath, but for now, I'm just going to say welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's whenever I hear the concrete construction thing, I always like, whoop, like it's like a glitch in the matrix or something where I go back to this like memory of what seems like an old dream state or something. Yeah, it's crazy to look at how much you can transition in just not that long of time, you know?
How long has it been for you?
I'm 35. When it was around my like Saturn return, when I was 28, and in 2016 is when I actually sold everything that I had, quit my job, moved across the country and started leaning heavily into exploratory life of experience and trying to figure out what it means to be able to create things and bring them to life. But, so that, yeah, what's that? 6 years? There's 6 years now, 5 years, 5.5. And yeah, it was just weird. You know, I was working for $13 an hour in a concrete factory making receptacles that actually carried human feces underground. And that was just a whole nother life. And we can go as high as we want to go as long as we believe it.
So what was the turning point for you, or the breaking point, or that moment where you decided enough, I'm going to sell? And why did you decide to do that?
That's loaded. I had a couple really interesting. So I was never really into metaphysical or meditational things. I think when we grow up, we have all these layers that are stacked upon us to try to teach us who we are and what we're going to be, whether it be from, parents or politics or religions or education systems. And I was sort of just starting to try to understand what it means to discover that inner child in myself again and peel back these layers. But, I was kind of taught to just go to work to make money and then drink afterwards to celebrate that you're not at work again. And then, shut your mouth and just do what you're told or whatever. And so I did that. But there was this interesting thing when I was graduating college where I got on a plane to go to Houston for a job interview. And this guy got on the plane, and it was when you're boarding on Southwest and you're like, please, no one sit in this middle seat or whatever. Almost everyone had boarded and no one was in this middle seat. And I was I always have had a big heart, but I was definitely sort of an asshole back then. I mean, I'm not afraid to admit that whatever or whoever I was perfect for the time and place for me to learn my lessons, but I probably wouldn't have hung out with this dude. And, so I'm judging everyone that's walking on the plane. This guy gets on the plane. He's covered in all these tattoos and brands. And he's got this huge goatee beard thing. And back then I didn't have long hair. I was clean cut as can be, short hair. And he just looked like he had been traveling through the jungle or something. And, and I remember being please, dear God, do not sit here. And then he just comes up and he's like, can I get in there, brother? And I'm like, Of course. And I could smell him, like, just, he smelled, and I didn't know anything about him, but I was just naturally judging him based on like what I was kind of taught to do my whole life and what everyone else did that was around me. We were always judging. It was crazy. But this guy changed my life in so many ways. He asked me where I was going, what I was doing, and I was trying to like get him to stop talking to me, but he wouldn't. And now I understand why, but like he was just like kind of poking me. Like I was telling him I was going for this job interview and all this stuff was rolling out, and he was just not buying any of the BS. It was like, well, why are you doing it? And I was just like, well, because I need to make money. And he would just be like, but do you love it? And he just kept saying that over and over again. Do you love it? And I was just like, no, man. What? Like, it was kind of insulting. It felt insulting to me that he kept asking, but it was really the most amazing angelic message of all time. It took me, long story short with him as well. I'm not going to leave this out because it's kind of cool. I find out like, as he's asking me about myself, that he was being extradited by NATO from Rwanda because he'd been in Africa for like, I don't know, 8 years fighting for gender equality. And he had to have his wife like smuggled out of the country into Uganda because they were coming with shackles to like put her in prison. And he had been in prison for like, they couldn't hold him overnight, but they kept picking him up every day and putting him back in and letting him go and then putting him back in. And so he finally got out of the country, and his wife was smuggled out, but her vehicle got hit by a semi and flipped. And like, it could be a movie. The whole thing could be a movie. And I was just like, dude, this is all like, this can't be real. You know, there's no way. I've never met anyone in my life. This sounds like you're like Indiana Jones or something. So I just thought he was bullshitting me. And then he pulled out his phone. It was like a Blackberries back then, I think. And he was just showing me pictures of like this hut he was living in and this black mamba that he had chopped the head off of that had a lizard inside. And,
oh my God.
And then I was like, oh my God, I'm such an asshole. This guy's like for real, for real. And then he started telling me about all the brands on his arms from the tribes that he had lived with, and like how you couldn't be accepted unless they branded you, and you had to go out into nature with them and like be with them in custom like community and like their practices, and just how drastically it had changed his life, because he actually had ended up, he grew up in the same area that I did. He grew up in the same sort of like middle class Christian upbringing that taught him certain things, but he had this like metaphysical connection from a young age that was like, you need to go to Africa. And he didn't know why, but he listened eventually because it wouldn't go away, and it changed his entire life. Now today he's one of my best friends. I reconnected with him. And oddly enough, in 2017, I found myself coming back from Africa with like duffel bags full of jewelry to try to sell to raise money to help people at the school that I'm involved with now. It's an awesome project as well. But he changed my life. And like, it took me 5 years of deep struggle as to what that meant to actually get to the point to have the strength to actually fundamentally make a transition. And I woke up face down, pants down in my garage in 2011, and my my head was up on the step and my nose was bleeding on it. And there's a bottle of liquor in my hand, and my car was, and I had no recollection of the previous 24 hours, 48 hours, probably. I mean, I don't know. I used to black out all the time back then. And it was like this, in that moment, it was like, I kept getting his face in my mind, like, oh my God, like, what am I doing? And then I moved through a couple more years of like really severe struggle with like substances and alcohol, and like being so unhappy with this path that I had somehow chosen, or it chose me for particular reasons and lessons. And, just, it wasn't made for me. I'm very creative. I have an open heart. There's nothing wrong with working in the industries that I was working in. And I think that anything can be looked at from a gratitude perspective that helps us move to the next spot. But I was suffering, and I was in a lot of pain and depression. And I just moved through, and like 2 years later, again, another blackout moment, waking up. And at that point, I just didn't think I was going to survive any longer unless I made a change. And the biggest catalyst that actually catapulted me from that was it was the first time Apple put a podcasting app on the iPhones. And I was like just hungover, laying in this oversized jacuzzi tub that I had in my bedroom. It was ridiculous, ridiculous thing. Being sorry for like whatever myself and these things I was going through. And it was this woman telling her story about how she like went through these like years of depression and abuse and hardships. And it just felt so relatable to what I was feeling. This is why I think it's so important that people share, no matter what stage you're in life, like share what you're feeling with others, because there's somebody else who's feeling it. And together you can break through and make paths to somewhere higher. But I had never wanted to reach out and ask for help before, but something in her voice it was like calling for me to do it. And so I took her contact information that she put on this podcast she was being interviewed on. Her name's Amber Vilhauer, by the way. She runs a company called No Guts, No Glory Enterprises. She's an incredible woman. But I reached out to her on Facebook Messenger and was just like, I have a screenshot somewhere of what I said, but it was like, I don't know. I said something like, thank you for this. It really helped me in the moment. And like, she could have easily just been like, oh, that's nice. But she actually took the time to ask me questions about myself. And then she actually called me. She was like, can I call you and just talk to you? That was it. For no reason at all. She just could call some random dude who messaged her on Facebook out of sheer heart. And when she called me, she just shot down all of my bullshit and excuses that I was making about everything. I can't do this because of this. I can't do this because of that. And it helped me realize that there's these two phases of life. There's like self-imposed limitations, and then there's physical limitations. And, our self-imposed limitations are not even close to the boundary of our physical limitations. And what's even crazier that I know now is that you can go way beyond your physical limitations too. You just have to figure out the tools and the strategies and the things that help you thrive, which is really just following your excitement or your passions, to be able to break open through your self-imposed limitations and then get your physical ones and go beyond. But her calling me that day changed everything. And that's when I decided that I was going to actually make changes. And she connected me to two people. One was Hal Elrod. Do you know who that is? Mm-hmm. She connected me to Hal Elrod back then. And like, he's Miracle Morning international best-selling author. I have no idea. I don't have any reason to be here talking to this guy. He's not going to want to talk to me. Not true at all. Again, the dude was like the nicest guy ever, but I implemented his Miracle Morning practice. And then she introduced me to a guy named Paul Kemp. And he was like, man, I think you should podcast. And I didn't really know what it was. And I'm really introverted actually. And like, I don't speak out a lot when I'm in public places. I'm very much in my head. And I'm like, I just want to like create or write or draw. And it takes a lot of energy for me to do it. But I was like, okay, maybe. And he was like, what do you want to do? I was like, I guess I want to travel the world and have experiences, because I've never left this country. I've barely left these states that I'm grown up in. Like, I want to meet cultures and discover what it's like to have all of these things that I think are true broken down in front of me. And he was like, well, what's the best way to do it? I'm like, dude, I don't know. He's like, well, you need to find people that are doing it and ask them questions. And it's like, oh, that's actually kind of easy. Wow. That when you put it that way. So then it's like, you have a choice. You can either do this or you can not do it and continue to live the life that you're living. And the worst thing that's going to happen is if you try is that it doesn't work out and you end up exactly where you are. So these angels, it was just angels coming into my life. And I was finally learning to open up my awareness to that. I think you might have an experience like this too, but I think throughout our whole lives, the signs are there. The intuition is there. We are just so covered up with all of these distractions that we don't pay attention to them and we don't notice them. I mean, we're walking on the street with our phone in our hand, right? We have all of these things that are texts that are distracting us in every moment. We have emails that are coming through, but like all of these things that rip us off of our magic, why are there not more things that remind us of our magic in just a couple seconds? And we have to make the choice. Like, are we going to move towards our visions and our dreams, or are we not? And not everybody makes it. And I'm very happy to have put in the effort to teach myself that I can make it. But it wasn't easy. And that's kind of how it got started, and the longest story ever possible.
I'm not for sure if I have a really good follow-up for that. Are you kidding me? But all I can think about is just the man on the plane. You know, it's such an interesting thing. And I love how you just said that of opening our awareness. There's signs all the time. I was just talking with a client this morning, implementing what I call a morning abundance ritual, where you set your intention so you can try and open and expand that awareness. But think about how many times that's happened before, where there's a man or a woman sitting next to you on the plane and you're so closed off that no matter what, you're not even going to hear them. So thank goodness that guy was persistent enough to drag it out of you. How amazing is that?
He's a maniac. I mean, I'm so thankful every day. I just talked to him yesterday. His name is Jared Angaza, by the way, if anyone wants to check him out. He works for Space for Humanity. They're working on sending people to space. And he is, he's incredible, like just absolutely incredible. But yeah, he had to have been himself in, you know, the version of Jared before he went to Africa and did all those things would have never probably brought that up to me. But he's like, I'm trying to get to Houston to see my wife. I haven't seen her in this long because I was in Rwanda and like, now that I've done things all around the world and I've been with all these different cultures and I've studied in these just really crazy out of the world ways that I didn't even know existed, right? That I've been able to sit and practice with plant medicines and learn like how to actually become in tune with the earth and how the earth and nature actually is our biggest healer. And you know, that's one of the massive things that we're not aware of as humans somehow. That if you look at the definition for nature and like the Webster definition, it actually separates humans from the definition. It says like everything on earth in the surroundings except humans. And it doesn't make any sense. Like, why are we dictating to humanity that we are different and separate from nature? And I think if I had not had all those experiences, I probably would get on a plane and not say anything to the person next to me as well. But now I'm the dude that gets on the plane and I'm like, what are you doing? Where are you going? Like, here's an affirmation card. I make these. You can make something like this. You know, like you can reframe your mind. And people are like, what? But then later, maybe they think about it. Maybe they do make a change. And I feel like we're all here to spread that message in some fundamental way. And it's a different way to do it for all of us, but we all have to kind of navigate that path ourselves.
But it's that openness to listen, that openness to just have a little bit of courage to explore and take that next step. And that sounds like exactly what you've done along your whole path, is to take those steps and listen. So you did end up traveling the world, right?
Yeah, I still do constantly. I'm pretty nomadic now. I live in my van. 2 days ago, I just got back from Mexico to launch that Kickstarter project, which is crazy. But I hadn't been out of the country since the end of 2019 when I got done climbing Kilimanjaro. And then the whole, the world went kind of sideways for a while. But in those 3 years from 2016 to 2019, that's pretty much all I did was just travel the world. And I've got crazy story, like just endless stories of amazing things that have happened to me and things that I've learned along the way. But it all does come down to how open are you? And the more you have an experience outside of your comfort zone, the more you're going to be open, and you're going to learn that like, it's okay. Like, we're not here to push against resistance or procrastination. We're here to surrender and let go of the thought that we even have resistance and procrastination. Can you break your habit of hesitating and move into that really scary thing that is looking at you, the blank canvas or the blank piece of paper, or that call that you need to make to somebody who may be able to help you connect the dots to some sort of explosive creative event in your future. You're never going to be able to do any of those things by just sitting in and being a recluse. Although I think internally we can access some of the most heavenly divine energies of all time. Everything starts internally. But if you want to play in the world and really make an impact and have fun while you're here on earth, like it's important to play with others and to see what's out there that's different than what you're used to.
When you first started traveling, how scared were you to do that? That was new for you at that time, I'm assuming.
Oh, I mean, so scared. I'm like this ridiculous giraffe looking 6'4" gringo, like half ginger, and like going anywhere, almost, most places in the world, except for like Amsterdam and maybe parts of South Africa. I'm just always standing out. And so then that's humbling, because it's like, well, everyone is looking at you like you're different. You are different. So then how do you melt into this and like try to understand what this culture is into and what they believe in? And like, there's some really amazing roots around the entire world of similarities. It's like the relatability in places that feel so different. You can find something that's so similar. And it's just, when you do that, it's these magical moments, and you meet people that you love, and you meet people that you want to know, and doors open for you that wouldn't open before, and doors open for you that wouldn't open for anybody else. And it's like opportunity just starts to explode.
Thank you so much for saying that, because I often relate that to people who grow up in a community. They are so scared to leave because they're worried about becoming something they're not. And I always think about, you go to travel to learn more about who you are. It doesn't mean you can't go back. It doesn't mean that you can't return to a place that you grew up, that you love. And maybe you do change, maybe you don't, but it makes you, I think, appreciate those roots even more. So it is scary. I mean, I've traveled a little, certainly not to the extent that you have, but it's amazing and scary at the same time. And that's just okay.
It is the greatest form of education, in my opinion. And you're right about the gratitude thing. When you go back to the place that you're from, you don't just see the place you're from, you see all of the magic and opportunity and potential of growth at the place that you're from. And you see all these new ways to like share and relate that you would have never learned had you not seen it somewhere else. And then that becomes a different dynamic when you're talking to your parents, or you're talking to your brothers and sisters, or you're talking to your old friends. You open them up just by being someone who has experiencing something different than what they have. By sharing it in those moments, it sort of opens them up to be like, could I leave? Could I go do that? Could I make something new? Could I write a book? Could I contact someone and get a better job that I'm more interested in? A lot of people need to see it in action close to them via someone that they know before they believe that it can actually happen. I don't really remember ever seeing it from anyone in my sphere until I met that Jared guy. And that was my activation. And I think we all have different activation points, but by getting out and doing that and bringing that back home, you not only have much more gratitude for where you came from and what's there, but you're also able to sort of lend a new eye or a new hand to the possibilities that are present that most of us aren't seeing. And that's the magic. Like collectively, we all are sort of in this domino effect. We need that more. That's the magic. It's in the moments like that.
It's beautiful. And it also allows you to learn more about yourself so you can have those connections and to create those connections. And sometimes we need to go away to be able to discover more of who we are.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to burn those bridges. Like I don't know, when I was making my transition, best friends, parents, you're quitting your job. What? Yeah. You're going to sell all your thing? What? Are you crazy? It can make you feel so outcasted, unloved, weird. You start to question your own self. And like this, because there is this universal force of creativity that is within all of us. And it wants you to play with it so that we can continue to evolve for the best method for all of us. But then there's also this force that works against it. And that's procrastination and resistance and fear. And procrastination and let's just say resistance gremlins are there to stop creation from happening. It's the opposite force. And they don't want it to happen. So they are going to bring the fucking army from the people that are most vulnerable and close to you to really test you and see if you're going to go all the way. Because most people will stop and they'll be like, oh, you're right. I shouldn't travel there. I shouldn't look for a new job. I should keep this house or whatever. And when you have, it's dangerous when you have your best friends and your parents telling you those things. That's how people get stuck. That's how towns get stuck. That's how full civilizations get stuck. And it's not where we want to be. So you have to go into the hero's journey at that point and be like, I understand where all of you are coming from. And I appreciate it because it really is coming from a place of love, usually from them. They care about you. They're worried about you. They don't want to see you get hurt or get lost, which is one of the biggest kind of parent-child dynamics that I imagine that you've already had to go through in a lot of forums. It's like you sometimes err on the edge of caution because you care and you don't want something to happen. But that can be limiting to a child who's trying to do something, past the level that they think they're capable of. And there's like, where's the balance there? So I think any individual has to be able to say, thank you for the support and the love, even if it feels negative. I'm going to do this anyway. And then when you see how happy I am or how much I've changed or the things that I've learned, then I know you'll support me in this method too. And then I'll be able to share and help you also, and we'll be able to grow together. And it's a beautiful tunnel to go through. It's one of the hardest ones to start walking through, though.
I like how you put that of a tunnel, though, because it is dark and cold and scary when you first start and you don't have a lot of support and you can't always see what that light is going to be. So how did you get that confidence to take those first few steps? Because I'm certain, and I think you've already said that, you've got the naysayers, you've got the people who punch the time clock, you do your 9 to 5, which there's nothing wrong with that, but it's a hairy, scary thing, stepping away from that with no plan. Yeah. So how did you have the confidence to keep moving forward despite the lack of support?
I think the confidence came from, I probably didn't have much confidence. I was so scared, but I had will. And the more I surrounded myself with, so I started a podcast. It was called The Artsy Now Show back in 2014. And that's when I started interviewing people that were doing, creative entrepreneurs around the world. With each new person I talked to, I learned something else, and I saw like they all had their own individually crazy, unique stories around the world somewhere doing something amazing. Like the second interview I did was with a Hollywood director named Sohrab Mirman, and his story was incredible. He like immigrated from Iran, and he won the New York International Film Festival at the age of 19. Like his whole story was of leaning into the shadow, leaning into the hardships and triumph. And I think having that support, like that was an entire new world of people that were doing something drastically different than what I was from. And so I put myself more into that world and pulled myself out of the other world. And as I did that, confidence just naturally appeared. No, you know what? I can travel to this country. No, I actually can quit my job because all these people have done it. No, I actually maybe can make some money away from my job if I do these things, or I focus on this instead of that, or whatever. But there's like also this metaphysical trusting side of it. I started meditating, and I meditated a lot. And in my meditations, it was very clear whatever channel I was connecting to. I mean, you can call it Muse, you can call it God, you can call it Source, you can call it Ryan Gosling's undies, whatever you want. Whatever channel I was connecting to, it was saying like, you can't sit here. You got to keep moving. You got to do this. You have to keep going. Because if you don't, you're going to feel like you did before. And we know how that feels. And so there's no point in staying and not trying, because I don't want to feel like that. I don't want to get stuck here anymore. I can't. I've already felt it. I've already known how I react to it. And so it was confidence with experience of just taking one step at a time. I mean, you can react in a lot of different ways. And I think that the way that we react in any moment is going to be the foundation for our success long-term, because life isn't necessarily about what happens to you. It's not about the beauty that happens to you. It's not about the bullshit that happens to you. Life really is about how you react when it happens. And so we can take our current situations and all the excuses and allow all that resistance and procrastination to basically come in and have a disco party in our brain until we sit down on our couch and watch reruns of, Jerry Springer or whatever, eating tubs of ice cream and putting, things in our butt or whatever we do on the couch. I don't know. Or we can use it as fuel and as motivation to move towards our visions and our goals and our dreams. And like, I didn't want to do that anymore. I didn't want to be like stalemate on a couch with a bunch of weird people doing weird things, watching television zonked out. I wanted to fly. I wanted to turn that. I wanted to throw the TV away and look at a sunset. I wanted to put my phone down and look at a sunset. Like I remember making this image and it was like, I am trading this, and it was my television for this, and it was an epic sunset. And then I slowly started to get rid of all my physical belongings, and the confidence grows as you do. As you take that step, the confidence, it moves through you, and like you just realize that it's always been there, and we've just been suppressing it. So you got to believe, but just even if you don't believe, be open to it and be willing and jump on the train, answer the phone, answer the phone. Isn't that the Alan Watts always says? Terrence McKenna, answer the phone.
Yeah. But put your cell phone down, answer the life phone.
Yeah. Answer the life phone.
What made you start meditating? You talked about meditation being a big part of that journey. What started that meditation for you?
There was a woman that I interviewed. Her name was Kim Nickel. And she had a crazy story where she was a lawyer, stressed out lawyer in San Francisco, every day going to work, working all these long hours. There were drugs, there was drinking, there was partying. And then one day she went to work and she watched the guy that she worked next to get hit by a bus and die right in front of her. And she's telling me this story. And I'm feeling it, because it happens all the time. It can happen anytime. Like we're not aware that it could happen, but it can. And like life really is this surrendering and letting go. It's like every single moment is a constant series of letting go until the greatest let go of all. So we can either use death as a reminder of how beautiful each moment is, or we can let it scare us and act like it's going to take everything we've ever known away from us, which actually isn't true. It gives purpose to everything we've ever known. And she went into this just like drastic transformation at that point of becoming a meditation teacher for law firms to try to reduce stress. And like her story was beautiful. Like she started going to all these different lawyers and law firms and teaching the benefits of meditation. And that became her path. Well, she sent me a couple of her meditations, and she had a series called Five Mindful Minutes, I believe. And it was just 5 days, and there was a 5-minute guided meditation each day. And each one of them was slightly different, but it was a very basic form of meditation, and her voice was very soothing. And I wasn't a believer, but after I heard her story, it activated me. I was like, oh, another activation. Like I believe her. Maybe this will help me. Like maybe it will help me like reduce the anxiety I'm having about thinking of leaving my job at that point, because I hadn't done it yet. And I started meditating, and the very first day that I did her meditation, I just got like this crazy amount of clarity and energy, and I just took off running down my neighborhood and started like running sprints. And then all these ideas started coming through my head, and I was thinking about like, I remember specifically this idea because it became one of the affirmation cards I made in the first deck a couple years later. But the thought that came through was, we are our own lottery ticket. If we invest in ourselves a little bit and we take some risks, we can create and win, the life of our dreams. Because I'd spent so much time in the construction industry in Kentucky around all these people that were constantly buying lottery tickets, like just with no hope, just like putting all their money towards this external idea that something's going to show up, when really it's all internal. Like if we just invest in that heart, in that gut, in that brain, in the body, in our connection between the three, that's when you really start to bring your dreams into life. And it can happen way faster than you ever imagined. But that's when I started meditating. And thank you for asking that, because I hadn't thought about that in a while. And it's sort of bittersweet to think about Kim and that whole transition, because it seems like so long ago now.
But again, it's another connection to a human, listening to their story, seeing how something, what I would call a significant emotional event, happened for somebody and the transformation that they went through. So it goes back to what you were saying earlier. Don't be afraid to share your story. Don't be afraid to talk about it, because you never know how it might impact someone. I think that's amazing. And what a great opportunity that you were able to have that conversation with her.
Yes, you're right. I mean, all those, like Jared, Amber, Nick, Kim, like, and so many other people. Yeah. I think back on how, if I had not reached out or shared, or they hadn't reached out or shared, how drastically different maybe all of our lives would be.
Yeah.
You know, we're all collectively in this, and it's wild, super wild.
You talked about, I agree, it is beyond super wild sometimes. You talked about creativity. One of the things that I've seen you say or write is, when did simple get so hard? And I want to I want to ask you that in terms of creativity, because, like you've said, we all have this inside of us, but because of either conditioning or beliefs or limiting beliefs or all the things that surround our foundation, we don't know how to tap into it the way that we could. So how would you suggest somebody to start tapping into that creativity and listening to those voices and guidance of what's possible?
When did simple get so complicated? I remember when that came about with my lovely friend, Olivia. She's a shaman and quite remarkable. When did simple get so complicated? So I think sometimes, just to lead into this, I'm not sure that there's anything, like when I sit down and I like maybe have resistance gremlins come and I start kind of freaking out about, I need to do this work or this, or I have to do this. I start to remember, like, the principle that has always worked the best for me is that divine feminine idea of stop trying to figure things out. Stop trying so hard to figure things out. When you look at nature, it just sort of unfolds. It doesn't look like it's really trying, right? Like a plant, it just unfolds. It's already built into us to just unfold and be. What if we stopped dictating exactly how we think we need to be structuring ourselves, and instead just allowed the world to flow through us? I don't know if there's anything more important than sitting around a fire, looking at the stars, looking at other people in the eyes, and just saying, I love you. Like, I appreciate you being here. This water that I'm tasting, oh my gosh, like, where did this come from? And whose energy had to have been used to carry this to me and to package it and get it to me, or whatever. If someone is trying to explore opening up creativity, I don't think there is a better way to do it than to take your shoes off and go outside and stand in a river, or climb up a tree, or roll around in the mud. There's real science behind this too, if you want to get into that a little bit. I mean, I think that humans and all living creatures, we're all electrical beings, and we have these electrical currents that are hooked into us from an electrical earth. And it may seem so obvious that the planet has healing powers, but the majority of us actually don't remember that ever. We forget. And with the invention of rubber-soled shoes and industrial walls and blockages and concrete, or floors that are with subgrains underneath that actually disconnect us from the earth, or hospital delivery rooms and all of these rubber gloves and things that are preventing us from connecting to the earth and each other. How often are we really getting a connection to the earth? How often are we actually getting the benefit of the healing nature of the planet? It's not as much as you would think. And so, how if you get in the shower and all of a sudden you get these like great ideas, it's because the water is hitting you and it's grounded to the earth. It's going through the pipes that are touching the earth. There's a reason that these amazing stress levels that we conduct, they drop, and there's electromagnetic frequencies that are flying all around us, from internet, from cell phones, from towers, whatever. The beautiful thing about touching the earth with your shoes off is that you can actually neutralize the electromagnetic frequency and the radiation that's charging through your body. I can break down exactly how that works if you want, or we can just say that there's amazing tool. Like, for anyone who's stuck inside of a cubicle or a house and you can't leave. I mean, there are situations where people cannot make it outside. Luckily, there's amazing companies now that create earthing mats that you can stick into the grounding outlet of your house. And it will actually, you know, if I touch my computer and I hold a voltage meter, it'll show all the voltage coming through my body from the computer. That is a problem in itself. But if you're on an earthing mat, it actually will show your body as 0. So when you're walking on the earth or you're using an earthing mat, you basically absorb a supercharge of free electrons from the earth's electrical current through whatever the point of contact is, usually the fascia on the bottom of your feet, or maybe your back if you're rolling around or whatever. But what's important is these electrons that you absorb, they act as antioxidants and they neutralize excess positively charged free radicals in the body. Now, these free radicals are created by the EMFs that we were just talking about. And if they are not neutralized, they steal electrons from other atoms in your body, and they create ongoing damage to your cell structure. And that's where inflammation comes from. That's where disease comes from. And so electrons acting as antioxidants from the earth actually neutralize this problem altogether. So that's why we see people that have like cancers and severe inflammation problems, and even myself with a whole lot of different health issues I had growing up and through my 20s, have been able to alleviate and heal so much of those problems by just connecting yourself to the earth more often, especially when you're sleeping, because when you're sleeping, your body is recharging itself, and it shuts everything down, and it needs those electrons to go in and heal all the parts. And if it doesn't have them and your body is connected to more voltage while you're sleeping because of your Wi-Fi router or your television in your room, then it can't actually do all of the healing that it needs to while you're sleeping. And therefore you wake up tired, you wake up groggy, you need coffee, you don't feel great, your creativity isn't great. So the more that you can reduce inflammation and make yourself feel better by just simply connecting with nature, the more your creativity is going to explode. And I just haven't found anything else that doesn't root back to that single principle when it comes to being more creative.
Yeah, thank you so much for saying that. And it includes, you talked about how Alrod earlier, just your daily rituals, just taking 5 minutes, go stare at the sky, go walk in the yard, do something, get a silver plated spoon and rub it on your foot if that's the only thing that you can do, right? So it's just incorporating and getting in those habits that serve us until we can make different changes. And we'll leave it at that for now. Because it's not about saying, you know, there's so many people that I talk to that, you know, are listeners and viewers that have jobs and lives that they love. And there's nothing wrong with that. Right. But they're so freaking stressed out that they don't know how to balance. So it's not about radically changing your entire life. It's about implementing things that can make your life better. And I love how you put that, because everything connects back to the mind, body, soul. We're all this one being. It's not about me going to work and then coming and have a different life. I have one life. I'm one person. So it's incorporating all those things. So thank you so much for saying that. You said it very, very well of the importance of connecting back to the earth.
It's beautifying your area. If you have a job and you have a home and a routine and a family, beautifying your area with the earth's elements is another way to drastically increase creativity. I mean, bring some plants in, create a sacred space. One thing that really helps me is fill up a fresh glass of water every morning and set that on like your altar space or your meditation area and look at it. Watch the bubbles. I mean, there are people that can actually read bubbles in water and like channel information through it. It's beyond me, but bring water, bring plants, bring the air, burn some fire, like bring the fire in with the charcoal and the sages and the different senses, and get your mind just like out of the same old thing that you're always doing. Tata Eric, the Mayan lineage holder, oracle, whatever, I'll never know what to call him, that I study pretty in-depthly with when it comes to like there's something really beautiful about the Mayan culture and how the whole calendar and how it's all related to the earth. Every single day has a purpose as to what you do with the earth, and your ancestors and gratitude. Like there's not a day that goes by on that calendar where there's not a specific sort of gratitude type of action that you can take that day, or thought that you can think on, whether it be praying to your ancestors or planting your garden or doing something creative. He always says, we don't pray for rain, we pray rain. And then he just stares at you and you're like, and he's like, there's no space between, you are the rain. That's the problem, is we pray for these external things to show up, but really it's once you believe that it's already there inside of you, then it shows up. You have to remove the space. You can do that anywhere. You can do that from a cubicle. You can do that from a doctor's office. You can do that from your house when you're chasing your kids around. They're going crazy and running around their diapers on their heads. You can do it from the outdoors. And I just think there's all these beautiful things in nature that help remind us that we can do that. And it's easier for us to forget when we're not paying attention to nature. So just go stare at a leaf for an hour and say thank you. Go on a walk down your drive or like your neighborhood and say thank you to every single thing that you look at, and really think about what that thing is and how it got there. What is it? What does it mean to you? Could there be a message here? One of my favorite things to do is animal wisdom and like beasties. And every time an animal or an insect or something shows up in my life, I'm like, what does that mean? And I really do believe that these things show up and we can be aware of them, and then we can figure out what they mean, and it can help guide us on our path. And shout out to my friend, Sarah Seidelman, the most amazing animal wisdom book out there. It's called the Book of Beasties. And it's like $12 or something. It's way worth the value. It's this huge book. She's the one I was telling you about on the pre-call that channels information from the Alice the elephant. Unbelievable woman. But this is the book that I go to, and I'm like, because she breaks down, there's so many different sections of each animal. And it's like love life, affair, chakras. What does this mean in your work life? What does it mean in like a play way? And so just like look for the signs, whether you're into animal signs or you're into reading, philosophy books or whatever, like taking baths, make sure you're connecting with the element, make sure you're grounding yourself, and be open to new things coming into your life. And you can be open by removing the space in between.
Very well said. It just comes back to mindfulness, just really being present enough to absorb and have that openness and awareness. Yeah. So Heath, I want to talk about sweet ass affirmations. And so you have a Kickstarter out with your second card deck, and you call it Card Deck for Creative Maniacs, Unfiltered Affirmation Cards to Motivate Your Creative Maniac Mind. I've been watching it over the past few days. You have on your Kickstarter 966 backers, $58,000 and $58,178. That is amazing.
Yes. It is surreal. It's not, I don't know if I've really integrated what this means. Like I've been staring at it for the last 7 days because the goal is, $5,555. You got to go with angel numbers. And yeah, I had this like affirmation that I had been writing down a long time that was like, I raised 22,222, but it was like this massive affirmation goal. And oddly, most of my mass ones work with end up coming true at some point, but I had like a limiting belief around this. And I was scared that I was like going to cripple myself into it not happening. And when we hit the goal of 5,000, I was like, in one day, maybe we will get to 22, but I would have never, ever expected it to go where it is, except maybe I did on a subconscious level. Maybe I do in my meditations. I've done a lot of surrendering and releasing my expectations with this project. So thank you. It's crazy, super crazy.
It's amazing. And they are beautiful. They're weird. They're funky.
Thank you.
But they're incredibly transformational as well. Can you talk just really briefly about why you created them and what you expect for people, or what you hope to expect for people with them?
Yeah. So this is a weird idea that was channeled to me that I try to pay attention to when I'm in my meditations. You have to make an affirmation deck. You have to make an affirmation deck.
That's right.
I hadn't, I'd done some forms of affirmations through the Miracle Morning, but I hadn't truly understood what it meant to use an affirmation correctly or open it up for other people to do it. And so I didn't really know what it meant, but it was so loud in my head. I was like, maybe I need to look into this. And at the time I was trying to do a lot of explaining to people around like the Kentucky and Tennessee area where I had been living, what things like affirmations were, or, what it means to like take a vision to reality. Like all that is just like mindless dribble to most people in the area. Mm-hmm. So I was like, I guess it started coming through like, oh, I need to make an affirmation deck that's not so woo-woo. Because a lot of the decks out there are really just like, I am my highest self and all is well. And like, that's true if you know how to use affirmations and like, you really believe this stuff. Like those are great. They're true. But for the majority of like realists and people, it's not. They're never going to believe it. And so therefore they're not going to ever believe in metaphysics. They're not ever going to believe in being able to play with the universe. So I wanted to find a language that could help bridge the gap for these, for women that are into oracle decks, but their husbands think they're ridiculous. They could finally share a deck with them and they might actually understand it. Or I was talking earlier about getting quick reminders of our magic in just a couple seconds, as opposed to allowing things to distract us of our magic. And I saw an opportunity here to make something that I wanted to use myself that would be a quick reminder of my magic when I started to feel like the gremlins were coming to attack my brain. What can I make that I can look at? Because a lot of us don't have a lot of time. It's like, we don't have time to read a massive book. We don't have time to listen to a 3-hour podcast because everything's so fast paced and busy. I think there's infinite time personally. I'm learning every day still though. But the quicker that we can get that reminder, then the faster we can overcome our hesitation. And the faster we can make that action towards our visions and our dreams that is actually going to get us there, as opposed to not doing it and just sitting where we're at. So that's what these cards were. And they're really fun. There's some profanity, there's some sass, there's some deep wit, there's some humor. I've had people pee their pants before reading. Like I just took all of these boundaries that in these constructs around affirmations and I ripped them away and was like, how can I make this something that I would pay attention to and make me curious? And it worked. Like the first deck came out in 2018 and we had, like $8,000 raised to get them printed. And that was incredible. And it was like, whoa, for somebody who loves writing and wants to be able to help people with their mindset, this was the way to do it for me. And then, here we are a couple years later when that pandemic happened. It was just like, oh, I was actually working on a different project, but it was immediately like second deck right now. And I shut my phone off and I microdosed LSD and I laid in my bathtub for like on and off for 7 days in between being out in nature and being in this bathtub. And I wrote this whole second deck and it came to life. And it's been a year since that point, but now we finally got it on Kickstarter and like the design came together and my team did an amazing job and it's surreal. And it's like, whoa, 1,000 people are showing up to say like, I want this. And just by reading examples or whatever, like the viral, I can't quite understand how it's happening, but it must be happening for a reason. Otherwise it wouldn't be. And I'm happy to be a part of it and to, just to be able to, influence is a weird word, to be able to help others open up to the idea that there are better things out there and to continue to explore and, keep leaning into the mystery of life.
That's awesome. So what is the plan now? You're going to have the Kickstarter open for a few more weeks. And then what's the delivery schedule and production schedule for them?
Yeah, it closes August 11th. It's at 11 and then we're ending it at 8:22 p.m., which is, it's a whole, I love 11s and 22s. But so I'm already like, I have production lined up because I have already printed the first deck before. So like I have a manufacturer. It's just a matter of now I'm like, This is a lot of people. Like, this is a whole nother level of me, like packing boxes by myself and shipping them out. Now it's like fulfillment centers. But I think we're going to be able to start shipping them in early September, and just take it a little bit at a time and hope that we can get them all out, because it's quite magical and it's such a cool thing to be a part of.
It is. It's amazing. We will make sure, obviously, to post all of your links in our show notes, but specifically to your Kickstarter and any other links to support that. But I look forward to receiving them. I think they look amazing, and just big congrats to you on, first of all, I want to say congrats to you for listening to the call, for seeing those moments, those mileposts, those activation moments, those people that you cared enough to listen, and then that you had the courage to continue walking through those tunnels with no lights on, but you kept taking one step forward, because all of these experiences we all have. It's just a matter of tapping in and then being able to share and connect and help others. So thank you for doing that and sharing your gifts with the world.
Yeah. I mean, I'm honored, I guess, to carry the torch. I think collectively we all are sort of doing this side by side. And so I appreciate that. And I feel very similar to everything that you're doing. And I hope that we can, by having conversations like this, continue to activate others to doing it as well. And it's why I live. It means the world to me, for sure.
Well, you're definitely doing what you're supposed to be. So just keep doing that. keep having those creative bouts and seeing where it leads you.
Yeah, I will. I mean, we all have hard times still. I still go through bouts of depression, and I'm like, what am I? Does anyone like this? Is anyone ever listening? Why am I here? I think there's always going to be hard times, but that's why community is important, us to bind together and remind each other. And it gets pretty, the wave crashes, but then it rises again. The flower blooms and decays, and then it blooms again. It's like the sun's going to rise. Just hold on and enjoy the ride.
I think that's a perfect way to end this conversation. Heath, it's been an absolute pleasure having you. Thank you so much for sharing and being with us today.
For sure. Thank you so much.
And thank you, listener, if you're listening or if you're watching. Again, we'll make sure to post all of our show notes. This is so good. I just want to read, listen, and watch and digest myself, because I always learn. So I hope you do too. And we will see you next time on the Go Reflect Yourself podcast.
Peace.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Go Reflect Yourself. Please rate and review this episode. And if something moved you, please feel free to share. For more inspired action or to stay in touch, head on over to goreflectyourself.com or heatherjcrider.com. You can also take the growth mindset quiz and learn where your current growth mindset lies. Stay in touch on all social media at Heather J. Crider. Until next time, this is your host, Heather Crider, and I am challenging you to go reflect yourself so you can discover and become who you are meant to be.